The roots of Facebook trace back to a mischievous student's passion for building things that ended up turning him and his roommates into the youngest billionaires in the world. Ever since he was a kid, Mark had a fascination for computers and building things. In fact, at the age of 12, he created a program that solved a big problem his father was having. Mark's father, Edward Zuckerberg, ran a dental practice from their home and needed some sort of system to inform him whenever a patient walked into the room, since he didn't have a receptionist of his own. Mark saw the opportunity and built a program called ZuckNet, which would message his dad's computer whenever a new patient walked into the room. Since then, Mark was working on all sorts of projects, like creating computer games for his friends. It got to a point where his parents hired a private tutor to come to the house to work with him once a week. Eventually, Mark's hunger for knowledge got him to start taking graduate courses at a nearby Mercy College. Mark's school wasn't satisfying his appetite for computers, so his parents enrolled him into a prestigious private school called Phillips Exeter Academy. It was there that he met the programming whiz kid Adam D'Angelo, and together they started working on numerous hacking projects. For one of their school projects, they created something that got the attention of several multi-billion-dollar companies. It was a music software called Synapse, which using artificial intelligence could learn what type of music you enjoy and give you recommendations based on that. Several companies like AOL and Microsoft offered them well over $1 million for the program and to hire them, but the two declined and released the program for free. After graduating from Exeter, Mark went to Harvard University and by his sophomore year established a reputation as the go-to software developer on campus. He created a bunch of programs solving some of the biggest social problems Harvard students were having. He created CourseMatch, which helped students pick their classes by seeing what courses their friends were taking. But the next program he created was the one that crossed some lines. It was intended to be a prank but got him the attention of the entire Harvard student body. He created FaceMash, which was a website that compared the pictures of two students on campus and allowed students to vote which one was more attractive. He got the pictures of the students from hacking into the Harvard student database and uploaded it all onto the FaceMash website. Based on the votes, it created a list ranking students based on attractiveness. In just 2 weeks, the site was visited by 450 people with 22,000 votes in total. That means an average visitor voted 48 times. This made Mark insanely popular on campus, but was quickly shut down as Mark was hauled in front of Harvard Disciplinary Board for Students and was charged for breaching security, violating copyrights, and violating individual privacy. Mark's caliber for software development did not go unnoticed. A small group of senior students were looking for a skilled programmer to help them with their startup. Their names were the Winklevoss twins, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, and Divya Narendra. The three seniors were working on a social networking dating website called Harvard Connections. The website was intended to be a dating app for Harvard students who could add people as friends, send messages, and update their personal profiles to let friends know about themselves. Once things took off, they had plans to expand beyond Harvard to other schools across the country. The seniors did have a developer who was working on this already, Victor Gao, but he had to get off the project for personal commitments and recommended Mark Zuckerberg to continue it after the FaceMash incident. Mark was very enthusiastic and excited to be working on Harvard Connections. In fact, he told the seniors that most of the work had already been done by the previous developers and that it would be pretty fast for him to just finish it up. But then, over the course of a month, the seniors found it almost impossible to contact Mark as he kept sending out emails delaying the project, saying that he was swamped with schoolwork and that he had concerns of if it was even all going to work. In the meantime though, he was actually working on his own little project called the Facebook, which he never told the seniors about. It was similar to their idea, but not specific to dating like Harvard Connections is. It was more focused on friendships. Now, back then, there were already very popular social networking sites like MySpace and Friendster, but the Facebook was different for two main reasons. The first reason is better privacy settings. Your profile only displayed information to people you were friends with, and at the beginning, it was exclusive to people at your school. The second reason was less customizability. This made everything seem more consistent and professional, something MySpace was failing to do with their highly customized pages at the time. The Facebook was purely focused on social connections. Mark knew the Facebook was going to be huge and he was just the person to build it, but he didn't have any business knowledge and he needed money to pay for the servers. That's when he went to his good friend Eduardo Saverin, offering him a partnership. Eduardo invested $15,000 into the Facebook for 30% of the company and became the CFO. Mark had everything he needed to launch the Facebook. A few weeks later after the launch, the Facebook had thousands of people signed up and they were getting dozens of emails from people at other colleges asking to launch at their schools too. That's when he brought on his roommate, Dustin Moskovitz, who offered to help with the expansion. He also brought on his other roommate, Chris Hughes, to be the spokesperson for the Facebook. Together, the four roommates formed the Facebook LLC. It didn't take long after the launch until the seniors found out that Mark had, in their words, stolen their idea. After many more failed attempts at contacting Mark, they sent him a cease and desist letter to halt the Facebook movement in breach of their agreement. Mark ignored them, thinking they had no grounds to take action because there was no written contract between them and that they were working on a completely different idea. The Facebook quickly grew beyond Harvard and expanded to other universities like Columbia, Stanford, Yale, and many more. It didn't take long until Mark got discovered by Sean Parker, who was considered the internet startup kid and founder of Napster. Sean wanted to meet Mark. So Mark and Eduardo flew out to New York to have dinner with Sean, and that's where Sean told Mark that if he was serious about the future of Facebook, he needed to move to California and work on this full time. It was also in this meeting that Sean suggested to change the name to Facebook as it sounded much cleaner. Mark took Sean's advice and moved out to Palo Alto, California with Dustin and Chris to work on their startup full-time over the summer. There, he met up with Sean Parker, who became kind of a mentor to Mark, showing him how to meet investors, negotiate with them, and who to hire. At the same time, Eduardo was doing an internship in New York at Lehman Brothers while Mark was working full-time on Facebook. Mark asked Eduardo to work on 3 things while he was there: to set up the company, get funding, and make a business model. Instead, Eduardo did something that really pissed off Mark. He ran unauthorized ads on Facebook, which at the time, Mark was completely opposed to putting ads up so early on. And what was even worse was that the ads were for a startup that Saverin was running entirely on his own without notifying Mark. It was a job board site called Joboozle. Mark felt extremely betrayed by this because Eduardo started Joboozle knowing that Facebook would want to do something with jobs in the future, and he created something that would end up competing with Facebook. Worse was he even used Facebook to advertise it for free. But what ended up ruining their relationship for good was Facebook's need for funding. As the first summer passed, the Facebook.com grew more popular than anyone could have imagined. The company needed more money for servers for all the traffic it was getting. It wasn't hard finding investors. Some of Silicon Valley's biggest investors like Mark Pincus, Reid Hoffman, and Peter Thiel were lining up to throw money at Mark. Finding investors was easy. The hard part was getting Facebook's co-founder Eduardo's attention to sign off on the reformation of Facebook as a company under Delaware law, something that had to be done before any investors could be brought on. Eduardo was busy with his own things in New York and wasn't giving Facebook the attention it needed. The situation was getting more critical since without more funding, the Facebook.com would end up running on Mark's family loans. Mark saw Eduardo as becoming more and more unreliable and even a liability, so he decided to solve the problem by cutting him out of the company. Mark came up with an elaborate plan to reduce Eduardo's stake in the Facebook by creating a new company which would be a Delaware corporation to acquire the old company, which was a Florida LLC, and then distribute new shares in the new company to everyone but Eduardo. Mark needed to do this to get complete control over the company, otherwise he would need to get Eduardo's permission on every single decision he makes. Eduardo was lagging the progress since he needs to sign off on documents for every investment. Mark knew Eduardo would come after him with a lawsuit because of this, which he would settle with him later on and pay him a decent amount, something Mark knew Eduardo deserved. When the new company was formed, Mark had 40%, Eduardo at 24%, Dustin at 16%, and Peter Thiel acquired 9% of the new company for $500,000. A month later, Eduardo signed a shareholder agreement that gave him 3 million shares of common stock in the new company. In the agreement, he handed up all relevant intellectual property and turned over his voting rights to Mark. It was at that point that Mark became Facebook's sole director. A few months later, Mark had Facebook issue 9 million shares of common stock in the new company, from which he took 3.3 million shares for himself and gave 2 million to Sean Parker and another 2 million to Dustin Moskovitz. This reallocation instantly diluted Eduardo's cut in the company from 24% down to less than 10%. Over the next few years, Facebook was growing like crazy. With millions of registered users, Mark was getting offers of billions of dollars from companies wanting to buy him out. But he turned them all down because he didn't need the money. He believed he was working on something revolutionary, and he didn't want to give that up. And that is the story of how Mark Zuckerberg founded the largest social network on the internet.